Life Stories.
We were visiting some girls who was we were rented their apartment, and they were going to move out, and we were going to move in. So Dottie was visiting these girls that night. We called on them and to find out when we could move in, and I met her, and we talked for about an hour. The next day, I drove home to South Carolina and saw my parents and rest of my family, and I said to them, "I've met the woman I was going to marry."
Did Dorothy know this at the time?
No, but it only took him a couple of months to convince me.
Excellent. Now you moved on, of course. NASA, of course, didn't start. It was 1958. NASA started, was it something like that? 1958, and you moved in there. You said you were Capcom with Apollo 11. Very responsible job, of course. Yes. How did you feel when you got that message? The Eagle has landed.
Well, the tension in mission control was tremendous, and when I heard contact, engine stop, I knew they were on the ground, and the tension just evaporated, and we were so joyful, and that's why I couldn't contain myself. And when I tried to pronounce tranquility, it was just the excitement. And mission control, there was a lot of clapping, but everybody was real focused at that point, because if we landed hard and sprung a leak, we had to get ready to lift off right away. We couldn't leave them on the moon. So there was a elation, exuberance, a release of the tension, and yet focused on your job.
Now, for the skeptics that are watching tonight, did they actually walk on the moon in '69?
Did they actually walk on the moon?
Yes, for the skeptics.
Yes, we had 9 missions to the moon, 6 landings on the moon, very successful. And there's 600 pounds or 200 kilograms of or more of moon rock available, and they're totally different from Earth rocks. And so if I tell everybody, if you're going to fake something like a moon landing, why do you fake it 9 times or 6 times? We went to the moon 9 times. And if you're going to fake something, do it once and shut up. But we continued. So the evidence is overwhelming. In fact, you can go on the web now and Google LRO, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is a satellite orbiting the Earth, orbiting the moon, and it has a camera that takes pictures down to about 2 meters.
Right.
And they've taken pictures of all the Apollo landing sites. You can see the landings, the car we left. You can see our descent stage. You can see tracks in between, and you can see the experiments package all there. So, and there's 6 landing sites, and they got all of that evidence.
Excellent.
And so
So it comes from the horse's mouth. That's for the skeptics listening tonight. We did land on the moon. Now,
that we were challenging at that time, that race with, they never doubted that we went to the moon. Never.
Excellent. Now, Charie,
they tracked us. The Russians tracked us to the moon and watched us land. So they knew we were there, and they never called us a liar. So we really did.
Now you moved on, of course, and you were so for Apollo 13. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you at Capcoms when the famous communication came through? Houston, we have a problem.
No, I was not officially Capcom. I was home.
All right.
10:30 Texas time at night, and John Young called me and said they got a real problem. We got to go into mission control. I was just recovering from the measles, but I got up. I went into mission control with John Young, and we stayed there for the next 37 hours, working on procedures to get them back safely. And some of the procedures that we developed, I did get on Capcom and talk those procedures up to them because we had done it and I had experience as Capcom. And so they wanted somebody that could accurately relay these procedures to the crew in language they could understand. So I did that. That was the only time though.
There's a question come through here to ask you, was the film with Tom Hanks pretty accurate of the Apollo 13 mission?
Yes, if you saw the Tom Hanks movie, the film was very accurate. There's a few little small things that were Hollywood, but mostly accurate. The spacecraft were exact models that you saw, and the film was actually done in the films in the lunar module were actually done in a zero-G airplane. So it was actually under zero-G. So the film is very accurate. It's a movie, but it still portrays the adventure and the recovery of Apollo 13 very accurately.
Somebody else has asked that, they say that the skin of the lunar module is thinner than a beer can. Is that true?
That's true. It was, if it's unpressurized, you can push it in and it'll dent in and then pop back. But when it pressurizes from the inside, it gets like a beer can, harder than a beer can that's got that's untapped. So it was very secure. We had a lot of what am I trying to say? Faith is what I'm trying to say. Faith in the lunar module. It wasn't going to pop open.
Yeah. Of course, moving on then, you went into a lot of training because it was your turn to, you were selected to travel to the moon, walk on the moon. In that training, I have to ask you this question. Was there ever any discussion or real discussion about the fact that you may meet aliens up there?
No, we didn't have any alien discussions. Nobody talked about it. Nobody in Apollo had seen anything that was could be UFO-ish or anything like that. So we focused on the actual missions, and it was difficult enough to get ready to go rather than speculating about what are we going to see out there, buzzing around us. So we didn't see any.
And you guys, you're Air Force pilots and everything. I know you're famous for your handles and your nicknames. What kind of nicknames did you have for each other in the capsule when you were traveling to the moon? I mean, which one of you was James T or Mr. Spock or something like that?
We didn't have any words like that. The only name that was in the spacecraft was on my seat. And I had caught the measles during Apollo 13 and exposed the whole crew to the measles. And Mattingly had never had the measles, and they jerked him off the crew. So it was a big problem about a week before launch for Apollo 13. So I used to get kidded, and that I was Typhoid Mary, and was going to give everybody, the measles. So on the back of my seat, there was taped a name, Typhoid Mary seat. So I got into, but that's about it.
Did you play any other practical tricks on each other? Jokes?
No, not really. We had some experiments that were unusual. At one time, one of the crew wanted to fill his helmet with water, but a helmet full of water, if it all got away, it could short out the whole spacecraft. So that was a discussion. But we got along really well over an 11-day period. John and I, especially, we trained all for 2 years together. And lunar module is real small inside, and so you take your suits off, and you got 4 of you in there. And we strung up hammocks to sleep, and so it was it was crowded but comfortable. And you're so pumped up, you don't care about space or anything.
So you did actually get some sleep while you were up there as well?
First night was difficult, but second night, 8 hours in a spacesuit is exhausting. So after that, we got good sleep. The second night and the third night that we slept on the moon.
Now, actually, we saw the movie that you showed. It's very excellent, actually, and some of the action that you did on the moon. It looks quite difficult, actually, moving about.
The spacesuit was pressurized to 3.5 pounds per square inch. Can't put that in meters and stuff, but anyway, it was very stiff, and you could move your arms like that, but you couldn't bend at the waist. You couldn't pick up your knee. You couldn't sit in a chair like I'm sitting in right now. You get in the rover, and it was more like this. You were stiff in the rover, and to get seated right, you had to pull over your seat belt, and you could over cinch it, and that would squeeze you back into your seat so you were looking forward. But the suit was very difficult to maneuver and easy to lose your balance. And so we fell down a lot, not only on my back, but on my one time on my back, which was scary, as I said earlier. Mm-hmm. And on the front, I fell down a couple of times. So you got used to the suit, but it was never something that you could just sit down or bend over and pick up a rock. You had to use a tool to do that.
And you were quoted as previously saying that it was quite bleak up there and there was no atmosphere. How bleak was it on the moon?
Well, it was very bright. The sun's always shining when you're on the moon. And we landed with the sun early morning on the moon day, and we were there 72 hours, and the moon moves 1 degree an hour. So it was still morning of the moon day when we lifted off. The sun, the shadows were still there. It was very bright. Since there's no atmosphere, there's no pollution, no haze. You just see very clearly all the way to the horizon, very sharp horizon, and a very distinct horizon, because the gray of the moon, you look up and the sky's black. You don't see any stars. The only thing you can see is the sun and the moon, the earth. And where we stood on the moon, the earth was directly overhead, and you look up and you're looking at the top of your helmet in Apollo. So we just looked at stars are obliterated. Like daytime here, you can't see the stars. They're there, but you can't see them. And we were always there in daylight because our suits were not designed to accommodate night on the moon, where it gets very, very cold, almost absolute zero, and the suits would freeze up. So we were off by the time. The temperature maximum when we left the moon, it was about 115 centigrade on the surface.
Now the landing capsule itself, the landing capsule apparently was specially designed. The legs on it apparently were designed. Life Stories. for the depth of dust on the moon. Is that correct?
Yes, the landing pads, the bearing strength of the landing pads was the same as an astronaut on the lunar surface. And there was some debate before we went that the 200 meters of dust, you were going to sink out of sight. And it was dusty. I drilled 3 meters into the moon and it was still dusty. I brought it back, it was still dusty, but it had very good bearing strength. It's actually pulverized rock. And so as you step on it, it locks up together and you never sank in more than about 2 centimeters. Even though they had 3 meters of dust, you never sank in. So
there was some discussion with the astrophysicists beforehand, of course, that saying that the moon was so many million years old. But when they got there was something like 6,000 years of dust. There's something I heard later.
Well, I mean, some of the scientists, when we first went to the moon, calculated the age of the dust, the age of the moon. You know, in their evolutionary theory, it's 3-4 billion years old, and so they calculated the rate of dust that we see accumulating on the moon, and so it should have been 80 meters deep, but it wasn't. In some areas we landed, we drove our car up north, and it was like walking on a tile floor, no dust at all up there. But where we landed and where we walked mostly around the lunar module, you left your tracks, but you never sank in out of sight. So, all of our training was evolutionary and ancient ages. But as I began to read the Bible, God spoke to my heart and says, "What you going to believe? You're going to believe what I'm saying, that I created it all, and nothing was made that has been made that was not made through Jesus." And so I said, "Lord, I believe you. My other guys are my friends, but I'm going to believe you on the age of the earth and the origins of the earth."
I have to ask you as well, what kind of experiments cost $10 million?
We had 2 seismic experiments. We had a heat flow experiment to measure any heat coming out of the moon. We had a magnetometer to measure any residual magnetism. We had a camera, and anyway, those things are made, super clean and very fine circuit boards and little teeny pieces that made it lightweight. So it was all together. You put them together, and it was at least $10 million.
You took a lot of samples and brought a lot of stuff back from the moon. Tell us about some of the things you brought to the moon with you, such as we mentioned earlier, country music.
The car?
No, country music.
Country music.
What else do you
want? We had 2 cassettes, 2 little mini Sony cassettes, and we had a cassette replayer. So we plugged those in, and I had the country music. Ken Mattingly had classical, and John Young had big band music. And but the country music I brought was all done special for us. And the first group that came on had 30-minute show, and it was they introduced themselves. They said, "Hi, Charlie. This is Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton.
Wow.
And we hope you enjoy this show." And it was all done just for us. The next guy was Merle Haggard, and he had a special show. Then Buck Owens had a special half-hour show, and we finished up with Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed. So these were the stars back in the 70s, of course, and so everybody loved the show. It was real personal. They were telling jokes and singing songs, and made us feel right at home, and it was really nice.
Was there a message from Dorothy on with them, I think? Is that correct?
What card? There was a message from me.
Oh, yeah. Not a message on the tape,
Right.
but a message in our flight plan. She'd written in fact, several messages. And our boys had done some little scribblings and said to Dad, good luck, or whatever it was. And I still got those. Yeah, Dottie it was very good having those pictures and scattered through our flight plan. So
yeah, and he didn't know they were going to be in there. The wives were always asked if they wanted to put something in there until we gave it to whoever packed I don't know who we gave them to. I can't remember, but they put them in there and in his flight plan and everything. So they were all surprises for him.
Dorothy, was there ever any stage that you were able to speak to Charlie when he was on the moon?
No. In Apollo, they did not allow that. Shuttle, they allowed the wives to speak, but no, not during Apollo.
Now in the space station, they have phone. They can communicate by telephone. They can communicate by email, text, all of those things. And but we didn't have any. All we had was our S-band communication via radio, and the wives were not permitted to say anything on the loop.
Well, you came back to both of the bang. You stayed in NASA for a while, and you moved on to a new job. I believe you're selling beer. Is that correct in San Antonio?
I was selling beer. Coors beer. I still like beer, but I didn't like the business.
Well, from one of your quotes, you definitely won't be opening a bar on the moon because you said there was no atmosphere up there.
Yeah.
Anyway, you came down with a bang, and you were working when Dorothy told her story from her side. How did you feel at that particular time in your life, or were you even aware that Dorothy was feeling this way?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of arguments and a lot of tears and a lot of problems manifested in our relationship. And I decided to leave NASA in July of 1975 when I got this offer from Coors Beer to be a distributor. And so I was planning, I was basically pulling out of NASA, but planning this business, getting it organized, and traveling to San Antonio where this business is going to be from Houston. And so we were having disagreements and, how to sell the house and how to do that. I mean, just a lot of little fights, if you will. And
well, I even told him I was thinking about suicide, and he didn't know what to do about it. So he just said, "You'll feel better tomorrow morning." So.
And how did your boys feel going during this particular time as well? Were they affected at all?
No.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I don't think that they were affected at all with our
no.
problems. We didn't argue in front of them. Not really our arguments weren't that bad. It was
I was more of a military drill instructor dad, and I was real hard on the boys. I loved them, but I was pounding them into perfection like I was or thought I was. And when they showed me when God showed me how hard I'd been on them, that softened me a lot. And our relationship grew and grew and grew. And now our family's very, very close.
Fantastic.
I don't really think we argued as much as just he was focused on one thing and I was focused on another.
But you're together now doing the same thing. Excellent. There's one other question I want to ask. There was a very famous person in the space race in America and NASA, Katherine Johnson. Did you ever get to work with her or meet her? Katherine Johnson, she was the mathematician who worked on all the space calculations.
That movie, the computer person.
Did you ever get to meet her?
No, I did not.
In fact,
I didn't even know about it till the movie came out. And I said, wait, is this true? So I called some of my old buddies who've been in mission control and mission planning back in those days. Says, yeah, those gals really did a fantastic job.
Wow.
It's all true. But I've never met her. The one that the movie was mostly about.
Well, I've exhausted my questions. Thank you so much for giving your time, both of you.
Yes,
Thank you, Dorothy, as well, for coming on and telling us about it. And one last question for you, for Dorothy. Does he still do what he's told now?
Does what now?
Does he do what he's told? Yeah.
Arguments, I guess.
Yeah, we were having a discussion this morning about that.
All right, okay. So one final question, Charlie, for you. Of all the decisions you've ever made in your life, okay, what was the best decision you've ever made?
That's an easy question to answer. It was following Jesus. As Jesus come into my life, and that changes your life permanently. And the peace and the love and the joy of God comes into your life. And the closer you get to Jesus, the closer you experience his love. So walking with Jesus beats walking on the moon.
Well, Charlie, you may not walk on the moon again, but you'll definitely walk in the heavenlies.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll just hand back to Alan.
Thank you, George. Oh, Charlie and Dorothy, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for all the time you've given to us tonight. We appreciate you. You're a very busy life, I know that, but thank you for giving the time tonight to share. And I'm sure many, many people will be blessed by what you shared tonight. And please, if you want to know the same Jesus that Charlie and Dorothy have shared about, please contact us on our hotline 07943 550 287. Or if you're outside the UK, +44 794 355 287. Please go to our website, LifeStoriesWorldwide.com, and there you can click on and find out, how can I know God? You can also find out how you can get a Bible app and learn more about this wonderful God. But please don't go on without making that commitment to Jesus. It's the most important decision you will ever make in your life, as Charlie just said, to follow Jesus. And you will indeed one day walk in the heavenlies with him. So thank you both so much. It's been great having you. I remember the wonderful times we had when we were in Wales, going around Wales, and you shared in different parts of Wales. Remember the convention in Austria when we were there? Yeah. I remember the blessed times we've had together. It's been wonderful. And it's so good to see you both again, looking so great. And I pray God will continue to bless you and use you in the future in all the ministry that you're doing. May God really bless you both. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
God bless you too, and all of you involved with the Life Stories. What a ministry. God bless y'all.
Bless you.
Thank you. Can I also invite everybody next week to join us again next Monday, 8 o'clock, for another life story. Next week, you can hear the story of Stuart Patterson, who was involved in gang warfare in Glasgow, in terrible violence and drugs. He was first taken to prison at the age of 19, and his life spiraled down and down and down. And then one day in 1997, in May 1997, something happened that changed his life. Please join us next week to hear what happened to Stuart Patterson and how his life was changed. And if you want to watch these stories again, you can go to on our website. You can follow on Life Stories at Lunch. You can follow all these different stories from Monday evening. You can watch this story again tonight that Charlie shared. And please pass it on. Please tell your friends that they can also hear this wonderful story. So thank you all for being with us. May God bless you all. Thank you, George. Thank you, John. And again, thank you so very much, Charlie and Dorothy. Good night. God bless.
Life Stories.